Whether or not you practice anything in yoga or have ever joined a yoga class or not, I'm sure you know what happens in a typical yoga class. Thanks to social media and some personalities like Baba Ramdev, who is among the first few to bring yoga to the common mass on such a big scale. We are fortunate enough that some people brought yoga to the level that even those who had never heard of its name are doing it in some way or the other. There is no doubt that it has worked wonders in maintaining good health in people and has prevented and even cured many diseases to a great extent. The recent crisis of coronavirus witnessed that people who were taking care of their health through some yogic practices and maintaining a healthy diet were least affected, or at least stronger than their counterparts in handling the effects of the virus. I myself noticed this difference in dealing with my own recovery process and that of those in my known circle. In fact, I can confidently say when I was in my teens or 20s, I was not even half as strong and healthy as I am today. And it's only because of yoga. So there is no question about its importance in day-to-day life, especially in a time when everything around us is highly polluted. The spread of this ancient knowledge is not less than a boon for us. On the other hand, it's dangerous that day by day its real purpose is getting diluted. It's increasingly becoming synonymous with weight loss programs. When you increase the quantity of anything, maintaining the same quality becomes increasingly difficult. And that's what we are seeing with yoga practices as well. If you have listened to my previous episodes, especially the second and the third episodes, you would know that the real purpose of yogic practices is to raise ourselves to the level of becoming one with the Supreme Consciousness. There are many ways one can proceed on this path, and Hatha Yoga is just one of them. It is the way in which we make our body a tool to rise above the body itself. Hatha Yoga is for those who are strong-willed when it comes to handling their body. The Sanskrit word Hatha indicates persistence and tenacity in anything we do, which is what is needed in the Hatha Yoga practice. The practice that we do as part of a typical yoga class is an oversimplified form of Hatha Yoga. They are very mild versions of the actual practices designed for weight loss and handling diseases because today's lifestyle and incorrect food choices cannot ensure health. It's extremely difficult if not impossible. In ancient times, people did so much physical work, ate fresh food, and remained as naturally as possible that their lifestyle itself ensured good health. And that's why originally Hatha Yoga was not a health management system. In fact, if you read some ancient texts about yoga, it will tell you that a certain level of health was a prerequisite to even start practicing yoga. It was not for the weak and sick. Now what does that mean? Are we doing it all wrong? Not at all. We should be thankful to all those people who have designed and propagated it in a way that it can ensure good health for whoever practices it. We just need to understand that this is not the original form of Hatha Yoga. We send our children to preschools so that they learn the basic requirements like how to sit in an environment which is new for them, how to deal with other kids and learn the alphabet and so on, so that when they reach the formal school, they can easily focus on the learning. If a child doesn't go to preschool and doesn't learn anything at home as well, then he would find it difficult to straight away adjust in a formal school. So the learning in the preschool is a prerequisite, and if the child doesn't have that, then the formal school teachers will need to reduce the intensity of the syllabus for him to adjust. That's exactly the situation with Hatha Yoga practice today. We are utilizing the formal school to learn what we should have ideally learned in the preschool. Because we cannot live healthy inherently through good food and lifestyle, we will have to go to the gym or a yoga class designed for the purpose. Nothing wrong with that. However, we are so overwhelmed with our achievements at the bodily level that we have forgotten we have to move on beyond it. Why I am even talking about all this? It's because if people gain a certain mastery over some advanced postures or a close to perfect body as per the market standards, they start thinking that they have become yogis. This might sound a bit blatant, but let us acknowledge that we may be headed in the right direction, but most of us are not yogis yet. So personally, I find it very uncomfortable when someone refers to me as a yoga teacher, or when, because of the lack of proper terminology, I need to introduce myself as one in a certain context. I am someone who wishes to explore the higher dimensions of existence, the one who wants to become spiritual in the true sense. I am a seeker if we use the right terminology. I know for practical purposes we have to use terms like yoga practitioner or teacher at times so that the general people understand what we are saying, but at least those who care should understand the true meaning of these terms. And for that, we need to remind ourselves that what we do in our daily practice is only a miniaturized version of real Hatha Yoga. And in true sense, we do a mixture of various other forms of physical exercises which are good enough to keep our body healthy. As an added advantage, they may also raise our consciousness towards our own self, but that's greatly a matter of what is our intent. Now, if we talk about the original form of Hatha Yoga, which is done as a spiritual sadhana, this is too intense a practice to be done by any common individual. You can imagine the intensity and seriousness of the practice by some simple facts that the one on this path has to practice just simple breathing for months, unless one gains a certain stabilized and conscious breathing pattern to become eligible to even start practicing pranayama. One has to start with cleansing the body with Shuddhi Kriyas to be able to perform asanas. And the person might just be doing only 1 or 2 postures for months, depending on what is right for him. He has to follow a strict diet, and it's not like the weight loss diet programs that we have today. Does it anywhere sound close to what we do in our fitness routine? No, right? Such an intense practice has to be done under the guidance of a guru who has the self-realization, and not to be followed just by knowing the theory or following some videos. Above all, in true sense, such a practice is not possible with the social life that most of us have. I'm not saying that you are not eligible for this. I'm only trying to tell you the difference between what we do as yoga practice in our yoga classes and the real Hatha Yoga. If we go by the analogy of schools, we are using the formal school as a play school by reducing its syllabus and intensity to achieve a lower level aim. But why is this distinction so important? How does it matter if someone is doing whatever he can? Above all, if what people are doing in a yoga class is good enough for health, why should they even care to know beyond that? This distinction is important so that yoga is not reduced to a sport for competitions. This is important because half knowledge is dangerous. People should know what they are really doing versus what is the real stuff. Let me give you an example. Those of you who have read some text about Hatha Yoga must be knowing that in the real Hatha Yoga practice, fasting isn't recommended. Rather, they recommend a moderate diet including milk and ghee as well. However, in general, we have always heard the importance of fasting, isn't it? Now, if people don't understand the distinction between what we practice and what is the original form, then it will look like a contradiction. When it comes to maintaining good health and cleansing the system when we are living a routine life, fasting plays an important role. But for those who actually live the life of a yogi, fasting is not recommended, otherwise the body will not be able to handle the heat generated in the process of doing asanas, pranayamas and bandhas. As I mentioned that these practices are intense sadhana and not just twisting and turning the body to burn some fat. What they need to eat solely depends on what kind of sadhana they are doing. So don't confuse the 2 points. They are not contradictory to each other, they apply in different contexts. The sole aim for the Hatha Yoga practice is to enable you to proceed towards the state of Dhyan. Hatha Yoga is the preparation, not the result. The result is what Maharishi Patanjali described in his Yoga Sutras, which we know as Raj Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, the one having 8 limbs. The first 2 steps are yamas and niyamas. We have talked about the 5 yamas in detail in the last few episodes, and I'll also cover niyamas as well sometime. After them, the next step is going into an asana. But this is not the same as the asanas we do in Hatha Yoga. Maharishi Patanjali describes asanas as Sthiram Sukham Asanam. And with this, he refers to a posture in which we can sit comfortably and with stability for a long time, as the prerequisite to achieve the state of pranayam, which is the next step. If someone asks us to sit in any comfortable posture without moving an inch, how long do you think we would be able to sit? Not more than a few minutes probably. That too with a conscious effort. So we need to understand that this capability is what is the aim of the asanas we practice in Hatha Yoga. So when you do an advanced posture, keep in mind that achieving the posture is not the end goal. The next step in the Ashtanga Marg is pranayam, and here Maharishi Patanjali doesn't mean the practice of Anulom Vilom, Bhastrika or any other pranayam. He talks about the state of pranayam, which is a state where the breath stops completely. In terms of yoga, we call it a kumbhak. The practice of pranayam that we do in Hatha Yoga aims to lead us to this state. The next step is pratyahar, which I'll talk about in detail in the next episode, but in short, this is a state when your senses stop taking inputs from the outside world. This is the result of the previous states of asana and pranayam. Once pratyahar sets in, one goes into the stage of dharana, the preliminary state of dhyan, and prolonged dhyan leads to the state of samadhi, which we'll talk about later. So essentially, Hatha Yoga is a prerequisite to Ashtanga Yoga. When people say they can teach you how to do Raj Yoga or to do Dhyan, loosely translated as meditation, this is a technically incorrect statement because one cannot do meditation. This is not an act. This is a state which one can achieve and can establish himself in. And one way to achieve that state is Hatha Yoga. Not to forget that it has to be done as a sadhana, not as a weight loss or health management program. Very importantly, we also need to understand that there are other ways to progress towards this state. Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Gyan Yoga are some of them as described by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. One has to choose the right path depending on his state of mind. So to summarize, let's be very clear that the simplified form of Hatha Yoga that we usually practice is of utmost importance to us today. In fact, probably a must to do, because without the necessary physical workout, we may not even be able to sit peacefully. Forget about the possibility of becoming meditative. At the same time, if we think we have mastered yoga because we can twist our body in unusual ways, then we are losing the whole point. In the next episode, we'll talk about pratyahar and dhyan and how they have to be incorporated inherently in anything we do. We'll see why this state needs to be generated from within and not to be induced from outside. Stay tuned and have a nice day.